Welcome to Football Incorporated Podcast, a podcast created by two of the greatest football minds.
Hey everybody, thank you for listening to the Football Incorporated Podcast. I'm your host, Cody Kirsten, here joined by my good friend, Patrick Arthurs. Patrick, how you doing on this wonderful Michigan spring day?
Come on, man. It's a beautiful day. Talking about football, nothing beats that.
Yeah, got whiskey glass in hand, some Evan Williams. Hey, if you want to sponsor us and you're listening, go for it. But we got a lot to talk about. We got a lot on our plate. It's really nice because even when football season's over, it's not really over. A lot of free agency stuff. Again, as we're going to be coming up, we're going to be doing another mock draft next week as we gear closer and more towards that as the draft is approaching and as we, more free agents, everything, the whole market narrows down. So we're going to talk about Rob Gronkowski, what the Patriots need to do to fill that tight end position. We're going to talk about Jordy Nelson, the 49ers, an article ESPN wrote on Nick Foles and how he brings consistency to the Jaguars, which we've already previously discussed on the show that's not really a thing. I don't think that's really going to happen. How the Oakland Raiders can be a really good team this year, we discussed on that earlier, but I think it's really important for people to know now with Antonio Brown, now that gets there, it's going to be a really big deal for Oakland to nail this draft. And we're also going to talk about Jimm G and why Chicago got rid of Jordan Howard. It makes no sense to me. But first, we're going to talk about Rob Gronkowski and what he meant to the Patriots organization.
And obviously with Gronk, I think when you think of Rob Gronkowski, obviously he changed the way the tight end position's played. When you think about him, he's his signature seam routes, all those catches he made. But in the later on in his career, he was a great run blocker. So it can be said that he was the ultimate player that followed the Patriot way in the Patriots organization. So now, is he an all-time great tight end? That's up for debate, but there's no doubt he's definitely in the top 5. You can't ignore that.
I think in his 9 years, he's done a lot more than most people do in their entire NFL careers. Now, obviously, like a lot of people just come and play for a few years. But I think what Rob Gronkowski meant to that Patriots organization was just a big, beefy blocker. He could block, he could catch, he could run. He wasn't the fastest guy, but when he had the ball, he would run you to the ground.
Oh, no, there's really no doubt about that. I think in my mind, he was the ultimate mismatch on the field. Number one, you can't put a cornerback on him, obviously because he's going to overpower the cornerback. But yet again, you can't put a linebacker on him either because he's going to run past the linebacker. So he really changed the way the tight end position really was.
Yeah, and for his total career, he had 7,861 yards, 79 touchdowns. That is a lot, especially for a tight end. And we talk about the tight end. We talk about the Shannon Sharps. We talk about Alez's, when he played for the Falcons. He was so good. We talk about even Mike Ditka going way back, and you had another one?
Also, Ozzie Newsome, the former GM of the Baltimore Ravens, and he played for the Cleveland Browns. He was really ultimate, in my mind, one of the best pass-catching tight ends. But I really think when we talk about Gronkowski, he was really the best overall tight end. But obviously, injuries took a huge toll in his career, which is why he retired. But nothing to take away from Gronk's career.
No, nothing at all. And I honestly do think he's the first ballot Hall of Famer. Now, he did great work on the field. But another thing that I think a lot of fans are going to miss is just his personality. I was rewatching his draft video, and him and his family were like in a circle dancing around on stage, and that's just the personality who Gronk is. And I think if you get him inside like a analyst booth or you get him on ESPN calling games, I think more and more people are going to watch those games just because Gronkowski is such a personality, and that's something I think that team is really going to miss.
Definitely. I put a step further. Put him on CBS. Put him on the CBS pregame show. Honestly, you put him on there. Give him a platform because that's one thing that made his career
Monday
so
night
unique.
Sorry, you can continue. But Monday night, now that Jason Witten's gone, is going to need someone else. And I think that might be a pretty good spot for him.
And I think that's what made his career so special. He stayed true to who he was. Obviously, we remember after the Super Bowl loss, he was partying like crazy. The media criticized him. Heck, even the Patriots fan base criticized him for that. But that's who he really is.
He just wants to live life, and he's a big kid that plays football. Like, I can understand why you're criticizing, but Rob Gronkowski is going to do what he wants. He's a party animal, always has been, loves chugging beers and partying with, And I don't blame him for that. You're in the NFL, you got a lot of money, have fun. You do you, and I don't think people should criticize that. I think that is something that really brought this team to life in the last couple of years, and what people really wanted to watch was watch Rob Gronkowski play, watch his personality, just watch this guy, be an element onto the field, nothing that we've ever seen before. Yeah, Shannon Sharp was really good. He was an amazing tight end. He brought a little bit of personality, right? But I think Rob Gronkowski's personality and just overall his presence on a field and his just the way he acts, just in that big, goofy, big kid manner, is going to be something the New England Patriots are really going to miss, and that whole team and organization are as well. Not just for his stats, not just for his catches and his big truck runs, but because he's a big personality.
Exactly, and the people, his teammates in his locker room, they love him as a player. He's one of those players in the locker room you really unite around. He's one of those players, he makes football playing fun. And guess what? And the biggest thing is, like the Patriots do all the time, they bring in these players that have these different personalities. Like, for example, bringing Randy Moss. And Rob Gronkowski is the same example. You bring him in, he brings that new element to that team, and guess what? They win. And guess what? You incorporate that style plus the Patriot way. That's a winning combination.
Yeah, and, he has 3 Super Bowls with them now. So
yeah, can't beat that.
He retired on top, Super Bowl champion. And I understand his agreement to want to leave. He's just been plagued by injuries the last couple of years, and for him, he still wants to live his life. What is he, 30, right?
Yeah,
you retired with your life savings at 30 years old. You can do whatever the heck you want for the next, how old? 50 years, 50, 60 years. You can do whatever you want if you live to be that old. And, Rob, I don't really see him coming back. No. But, you never know. Maybe they'll need him for a playoff run or something. But I can't really see him coming back. Maybe he'll come back and play for a couple games and a deep playoff run if they need him. But that would be the only way I could see him coming back. But I think he's going to be pretty much done here. And, yeah, I think the fans are definitely going to miss playing with him. And now that's something that they really need to address now, is that tight end spot and how they're going to replace him. Now, I know the draft's coming up, but I don't think you're going to get a Rob Gronkowski refill at this year's draft, and maybe not even ever. So, they're going to need to put pieces in place to help Tom Brady as he's aging. And honestly, I think Tom Brady should have left after last year. On top, he's getting old.
That's true.
I just think, him leaving at 41, 6 Super Bowl rings, I think that's the way to go out. And, I can't really see the Patriots. Yeah, they have the Patriots way. Yeah, they have Belichick, Brady. But that roster, I think it's a pretty good roster, but I don't think it would be out other AFC rosters as we head into the next year.
I certainly see that. I think in the draft, and again, we're going to talk about this next episode. In my mind, there's really a couple of tight ends I think the Patriots really want. The first one's Noah Fant, and the second one's TJ Hawkinson. Both are very talented, but most likely they're probably going to be off the board. So the real question is what tight end is going to be available. So who they pick, that's going to be important, what direction this offense goes.
Yeah, and so we're going to move on to another retirement that actually took me by a pretty good surprise, is that of Jordy Nelson. And I'm just going to say I have a bias against Jordy Nelson because he always played against my Bears all the time. But there's no doubt, you can't deny, he was a great receiver for Green Bay. In his time, he was okay in Oakland, but he was really, really good and a weapon in Green Bay.
He really was. He was really, I would argue, for most of Aaron Rodgers' time in Green Bay, his most reliable target. If you need a big play, he gets it. He will make that play. If you need to convert a third down, Jordy Nelson makes that play for you. And I think that's one person really Aaron Rodgers relied upon in Green Bay. And during his prime years, he was outstanding.
I think that's why they did so bad last year, too, is because he didn't have that number one receiver like a Jordy Nelson. He played for – he missed a couple games because of the Khalil Mack injury, right? Didn't he?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think he missed a game or something. I think right off the top of my head, or I don't even think he missed any. But, that defense wasn't very good, and that receiving core was not good at all because they got rid of Jordy Nelson, which was a bad move by the Packers. And now they're kind of wishing they wanted him back, but he's retired now, and I think maybe he'll come back. I'm not sure, but I don't really see it.
I don't see it either. And again, to bring up some news, as I was kind of scrolling through my Twitter feed, I saw that Jordy Nelson was visiting.
Follow us on Football Inc. By the way.
Right, yeah, give us a follow. I saw that he was visiting the Seattle Seahawks. Now, again, that seems like if he were to sign anywhere, it would seem like a common sense move because John Snyder is the GM. He's a former Green Bay Packer front office associate, so that would have been a possibility. But obviously, if you're Jordy Nelson, you've played 10, 11 years in the league. You've had a great career. So, in looking at his stats and overall his career, he had 8,587 yards receiving and 72 touchdowns. So you can say that's a pretty darn good career for a wide receiver in the NFL by any standard.
Yeah, and I think Green Bay and now Oakland, even though he was there he had a pretty good. I mean, he was decent last year. He had, I think, close to 800 receiving yards and 3 touchdowns. Not a fantasy football, person's greatest, thing. But, he did all right, and I just think now it's ready for him. He's ready to go. He's ready to be, kind of do his own thing now. And, again, we see another early retirement by someone in the NFL. And I think this trend may be catching on. Yeah, Tom Brady is an exception for sure, and a couple other quarterbacks are an exception for sure. But now people are learning more and more and know about CTE, the hits that people have, that type of brain damage. And once they get plagued by the injury bug, they miss a couple games, and then all of a sudden they're just like, you know what, I think it's time. I have millions of dollars. It's time for me to, do my own thing.
And I think in reality, that's really changing the way contracts are structured. Instead of focusing for on a long-term deal, you want more of a short-term deal or more money up front in your contract. So I think if you're a player going forward and your agent, I think that's the growing trend amongst players. And I think that's no exception for today's players now.
Yeah, I honestly think football contracts should be guaranteed, fully 100% guaranteed. You see baseball, $330 million, $430 million, $500 million, of money. We look at, Bryce Harper's contract. Yeah, we're football, but I want to touch on this really quick. That's a fully guaranteed $330 million. He's going to walk away from baseball with $330 million made over the last 10 years.
Yeah.
Or was it? We're not baseball guys. I think it was 10, 12, or 13 years.
Yeah, it's over a short. Yeah, 13. I believe it's 13.
So in 13 years, he'll walk away with $330 million. And, quarterbacks who are taking beatings after beatings don't even walk away from the NFL with that much. And yes, I understand that. Honestly, I think the cap should be raised to like $400 million because then that way they can fully guarantee contracts and they can structure contracts in a way where they get maybe 90% guarantee because NFL players have a shorter career than baseball players do.
That's true. I believe, and you can correct me if I'm wrong in this, but the average career in the NFL lasts about 2.5 years.
Yes, I think it's 2.5 to 3 years.
So yeah, in reality, I really think that should be a goal eventually down the road where you get these fully guaranteed contracts. But my big thing is, we don't want the same thing that's happened in the NBA where you raise the cap right away, then you sort of form these real super teams. And that's kind of my huge concern on this. But again, I think eventually down the road, and again, I think this also goes with the CBA negotiations, the NFLPA and the owners coming together on this, ensuring that wages can go up, the salaries can go up for these players. So again, I think it's all dependent on what happens in the next CBA negotiation on this.
Yeah, and I honestly think that we'll see in the next few years. I think players might even start going on strike here pretty soon because they keep taking all these beats, they keep taking all their putting their life. I'm sorry, not life on the line, but risking serious injury. Putting their whole body. That's what I meant. Putting their body on the line. Zach Miller. I just remember his knee just being totally, like I almost had a 90-degree angle in the opposite way it should be going, But I'm glad Chicago took care of him. But that's just he's never going to play again. So that's why I think because of the risk, contract should be fully guaranteed.
And I think the NFL, and again I blame the NFLPA for this for far too long. And again, I'm not trying to nag on the NFL Players Association on this, but year after year they complain about the terms of the CBA, but what they don't realize is they continue to give power to owners of the NFL. They need to solve this. They really need to solve this matter and say, you know what? We need to go in negotiations being firm on what we want. Then I believe the salaries will go up.
Yeah, I would agree on that as well.
And now one franchise that is in the spotlight, it's the San Francisco 49ers. And obviously people are familiar with this franchise because they paid their starting quarterback, and who they think is the face of the franchise, Jimmy Garoppolo, just a massive contract. And now there's real debate amongst the NFL community. Is Jimmy Garoppolo really that great of a quarterback? Is he overrated? And well, I guess we'll have to see after an injury-prone year last year.
Yeah, he had a pretty bad year last year. And even when he played in the first couple games, I mean, he wasn't lights out. You know what I'm saying? So this would be his third year, right? Because he played for the back half the 1 year, and then last year he was out. So this was going to be his third year. So he needs to play pretty much lights out this year. I think the way his contract is structured, he either plays this year or next year, and then they can opt out of it.
Yep.
So he either needs to play. He needs to play lights out this year. And, if he's pretty average, I think he's going to be, one of the most overpaid quarterbacks that we've ever seen, and off a super small sample.
Yeah, and I think when the 49ers signed Jimmy G to such a big contract, I started questioning why they did it in the first place. Because, I mean, really, in reality, what they could have done was they could have franchise tagged him. They could have said, okay, Garoppolo, you have 1 year to prove yourself. If you prove yourself this year, then we'll pay you big money. But again, I agree with you. A small sample size does not mean
it was 5 games, right?
Yeah, a 5-game sample size does not mean he deserves such a big contract with guaranteed money. I don't. And again, I'm not going to blame the front office for this, but the general manager, John Lynch, he's made good signings, but I question this signing whether or not it's really good for the franchise.
And, people are like, oh, Jimmy G, he's going to turn this whole club around. Yeah, he played a few good games, on the back end of that year when he got traded. But I just don't see, especially since he has a couple weapons, but that offense doesn't look very good, and he's going to have to carry that team.
And you can't really, and again, I think for a lot of the problems the 49ers had last year, you can't blame Jimmy Garoppolo for every single problem. But what I will say is, in the games I watched Garoppolo play, the most consistent theme I saw when watching him play was and again, I saw us play against my Detroit Lions, he was consistently late on getting the ball out to his wide receivers. And luckily, when you're playing against the Lions, their defensive backs aren't that great, so he should have had 5 interceptions that game. Luckily, he didn't have really that many that game, or if any. But again, that was just a consistent theme throughout the year. The games he did play, late on throws, he was really going slow through his progressions. Not something you expect from a franchise quarterback.
Yeah, and, in 2017, he threw 7 touchdowns, 5 interceptions with them. And in 2018, last year, 5 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. Those don't stand out to me as wow. Let's sign this guy. This guy's our franchise. This guy's he's been backing up Tom Brady for years, and they think that this is the guy. Yeah, he looks good when he's in New England, and I honestly think New England should have kept him and still, trained him behind Tom Brady for the next couple of years. So when he's ready to go, 5 years into the league, he's boom. He's solid, ready to go. He's going to pick up that offense, and he's going to play like Tom Brady. But these numbers, to me, don't seem like franchise quarterback. They don't scream, this is our guy for the future. They seem, average. And, yeah, he only played the back half of 2017, and he hurt himself last year. So for the 49ers and for Jimmy Garoppolo, if he doesn't get hurt, this is going to be his proving himself year. And I honestly think he'll throw for 3,200 yards, 28 touchdowns, and 16 picks. That's not worth the amount of money that he's being paid right now.
No, and I think if you're the 49ers, you need to, again, the 49ers believe this guy is the face of the franchise. If they really do believe he's going to turn this franchise around at the quarterback position, give your quarterback some weapons to throw to. It is so evident that if you give weapons to a quarterback that may not be elite at the time, it makes it seem like they're elite. For example, Nick Foles in Philly. You give him a lot of weapons to throw to. You let him throw the ball around the yard. He looks really good. But when you don't have weapons, you can't really expect much out of a quarterback. And that's the situation the 49ers are in right now.
Yeah, they have Marquise Goodwin, right?
Yeah.
He's a really solid receiver, but I think that defense is pretty good, but there's not a lot of names on the 49ers that jump out at you. Now, if 49ers somehow got Antonio Brown, this is going to be a whole different story. But I think because Jimmy Garoppolo is going to have to carry this team next year, I honestly don't see them even making the playoffs or, even getting 8 wins.
I will say, though, is the one bright spot on last year's 49ers team was George Kittle, the tight end out of Iowa. He was an absolute steal. You drafted him in the 5th round, and guess what? He's probably going to be the next, similar to Rob Gronkowski for the next 10 years.
Oh, yeah, that's a very good observation, yeah. He's a great tight end, and I think he'll be playing for a very long time in this league. Just watching him last year play, it was just like, wow, this kid is good. This guy is going to make a big name. And I think that's going to be, him and Goodwin are going to be the 2 main receiving targets for him. Will that be enough to carry the 49ers? I honestly don't know, and I can't really say. Don't want to make predictions here, but it could be, or it could sink the team having 2 major targets, and then defenses figure it out, cover them, and then what are you left with?
And again, I think with George Kittle, you look at his skill set, he's one of those players where we talk about yards after catch a lot. He's one of those players where you give him the ball like on a 10-yard pass, he can turn that into a 30, 40-yard play. So for Jimmy G, that's what you need. Okay, so again, like with this 49ers roster, the one thing that's really been really interesting to note of how John Lynch has built this team, he invests a lot of money in positions where he thinks that this team where they can take it to the next level. And the example I bring up, actually a couple, their fullback Kyle Juszczyk and their running back Jared McKinnon. So obviously with Jared McKinnon, sure, he was a good running back in Minnesota, but did he really warrant a 4-year, $30 million deal? Probably not. In reality, he's probably worth as much as the running back they just signed from Atlanta, Tevin Coleman, who got a 2-year, $10 million deal.
I think Tevin Coleman's a better back here. So I think, I want to repeat on this again. Next year, 49ers need to come out strong, and they need to come out hitting really hard. And Jimmy Garoppolo needs to be almost flawless if they're going to carry this team to a playoff appearance and even further, because that's the goal. That's why they signed him for all that much money, because he believes they believe they're the quarterback of the future. So, all right, let's see it. Jimmy, next year's your year. Let's see you do it.
Yep.
I want to see you ball really well, run really well, put that ball in the place. I want to get a lot of yards out of you. Jimmy needs to look like what they're paying him next year. And I honestly, coming off an injury and playing with that team, I don't really see what happens. And I think he's going to get traded 2 years, and maybe he'll go back to New England, to be honest. I could honestly see that happening. So I said they'll probably go, if we're going to predict records, they probably will go 8-8 or 7-9.
I have them going 6-10. My worst case scenario, again, 6-10. Best case scenario is a 9-7, because keep in mind the division they're playing in, it's not at its strongest point. It really is not, considering the fact that, again, the Seahawks are probably going to have a down year. I feel like it's not the same Seahawks team. Arizona is not nowhere near where they were when they had Carson Palmer. So again, they could go 9-7 theoretically.
Yeah, and maybe they'll go 9-7 and make the playoffs. So. Maybe Jimmy G's just going to put him over that little tiny hump to get him into the playoffs and win that extra game. But I don't think people agree with our opinion. But, it's only on a 7. He signed on a 5-game sample, played a few more games.
Yep.
And, so I don't see – I think that's the issue with Nick Foles as well. And an article on ESPN touched on this as well, that Nick Foles brings a consistency to the Jaguars. And while I agree with that a little bit, again, I don't really see it, and I don't feel that Nick Foles is the answer to this franchise. They should have drafted someone. They should have traded up. They should have done something to draft a quarterback. Nick Foles may be a solution for a couple years, but I don't see them being their long-term quarterback.
Again, it's this whole argument that Nick Foles is somehow going to put the Jaguars above his Super Bowl contenders is a bunch of crap. Come on, let's just be honest here. I know it's kind of like being a dead horse time and time again, but we highlighted his stats earlier in an earlier episode on this. Anywhere outside of Philly, he's an average quarterback. So my message to the Jaguars, you paid an average quarterback $50 million in guarantees. How can you justify that, Jacksonville? Seriously.
I don't know. Again, a little tiny game sample. Yeah, he's the Super Bowl MVP. But, if he's not in that Philadelphia system that he's in, he does not play good. And that's been evident through his career. And I honestly see a same situation. I just want to touch on this briefly again, but I want to hammer in this point. You heard it here first. Jacksonville's going to go 8-8 next year. Nick Foles is going to throw for 25 touchdowns and 15 picks, and he's going to get traded in 2 years. Because if he's not in Philly, he's not that good.
No, and again, I don't want to make it as if to the Jags fans out there that I'm just bashing on Nick Foles just to bash on him. I'm really not.
No, we're using evidence and stats from his career. Now, he's a good quarterback when he's in Philly. I'm not saying that he's not. He played lights out in Philadelphia. I'm just saying when he moves to a different team, he's not the same quarterback, and he's not in that system. So I can kind of see where the Jags would take a chance here, but I think they gave him too much money, and I don't really see them winning with him again. So he's an upgrade from Blake Bortles.
Again,
that's no doubt. I think he is, but how big of an upgrade is he, and was he worth all that money?
I just don't see it. Again, if you're the Jaguars and your logic is play good defense, your quarterback doesn't have to make many plays, then honestly you should have just not signed Blake Bortles to that contract, waited to draft a quarterback in this year's draft. Because number one, you're not paying all that guaranteed money, and number two, you can actually build a decent roster around a young quarterback. But now you're handcuffed with all this money you're giving to Foles.
Yeah, and I would agree 100% on that. Okay, so we just want to touch really on that topic again. Now we're going to move on to one of the dumbest decisions of the free agency. You're going to hear a lot of Chicago, I think, in these podcasts, and that's maybe because they're doing a lot of good moves, and also I'm a fan, but they're also doing some bad moves. Again, we already discussed, why they signed Chris Blue instead of Stephen Gostkowski from New England. If they paid him $4 or $5 million a year for 3 years, 3 years, $15 million, that wouldn't cripple the team, and you would get a solid kicker. That was your issue last year, but now, Chicago got rid of Jordan Howard for a 6th round pick.
Wow.
I feel every year they just play like roulette of let's get rid of our best players. When they got rid of Brandon Marshall, when they got rid of Alshon Jeffrey, when they got rid of Matt Forte. I don't understand why they do this, and it's so frustrating as a Bears fan when Jordan Howard has been a solid backbone of this team. He was so good last year. He rushed for 935 yards, 9 touchdowns. The year before that, 1,122 yards, 9 touchdowns. The year before that, 1,300 yards, 6 touchdowns. So in 3 years, over 3,300 yards, 24 touchdowns, and Chicago got rid of him for a 6th round pick. I cannot believe the GM and the owner would do this to Chicago, because Tariq Cohen, yeah, he's pretty good, but Jordan Howard was way better, I think, and he was a solid back, a solid power back that Chicago needed in that offense, and now their offense, I don't think is going to be that good.
I guess my question is, again, I could see why the Bears fans are going to be frustrated in this, and again,
I'm pissed.
It's really a stupid move, but at the same time, if you're at the Chicago Bears and you're Ryan Pace, I think you can find a player in the draft. But again, as you said before, all that production that he's had over the last couple seasons, you cannot, for example, a 2nd round pick in this year's draft, they don't have that resume and the results.
Okay, I want to add on. He got picked round 5, 2016.
Wow, draft steal.
And he is a steal. He's an absolute steal. 5th round pick. And so they got rid of him for a 6th round pick? That doesn't make any sense. And I think he's going to do great in Philadelphia, to be honest. I think he's going to be a really great running back, and they're going to utilize him very, very well. And then Chicago's going to look back on it like we do with all our players, and like, wow, we should have kept him. Like when they got rid of Alshon Jeffrey, and now he has a Super Bowl ring in Philadelphia. So I don't get it. I'm honestly befuddled and confused on the decision of this. They don't even have any draft picks till the 3rd round, and they don't even have a 1st round pick next year. So they should have tried to at least get a 3rd or even a 2nd. I think he's worth a 2nd. Am I crazy?
It's not crazy to think that. Look, Amari Cooper, the Cowboys gave a 1st round pick to get Amari Cooper. Amari Cooper on a down year. And to think that all the Chicago Bears could get for Jordan Howard was a 6th-round pick.
That's like giving him away, and I think for some reason it's like Chicago didn't want him, but that production is not coming back to Chicago. And I'm like lost for words here. I don't understand why they would get rid of this great running back. I don't think they're really going to find one that's going to replace him. Yeah, I mean, he was no Adrian Peterson, but he is still a great, powerful back, and Chicago needed him, especially with Mitch Trubisky, going on his 3rd year, his 2nd starting year. They needed to solidify that backfield. Tariq Cohen's like a little fast, freaky guy, but you need a power back to get you those tough yards, and he was a guy to do it. And I honestly think Chicago is going to lose games because of this decision.
I think so too. And again, I'm here to make a bold prediction on Jordan Howard's free agency. Here it is. Jordan Howard in free agency, when he becomes a free agent, he gets a 3-year deal worth $15 million. Again, let me reiterate this. The Bears could simply say, you know what?
They have the cap space for him.
Let's set the market on this deal and say, you know what? We're not paying you more than $5 million. Because guess what? If you look at running backs nowadays, look at Adrian Peterson's contract. 2 years, $8 million. If you look at the market, the way that's going, running backs don't get paid as much now.
And I think you could honestly pay Jordan Howard $7-8 million, and that would be a bargain. Because this guy, since he's gotten in the league, he has produced, he has made yards. I don't get it. Patrick, can you explain why the front office would do this? It's just so confusing.
I simply don't understand. And here's my take on this. Here's why I think Chicago is doing what they're doing. They want to say it comes down to 2 words actually: cap space. They don't want
to take up that much cap space.
They don't want to pay the man. But again, look, here's the deal: if they want to negotiate a contract, make it team friendly. Know what they could do? 4 years, $20 million, $10 million guaranteed. The last 2 of those years are non-guaranteed. They simply could do that.
Or they give them big signing bonus.
Yeah, one big signing bonus or a partially guaranteed contract. You don't need to pay running backs $10 million a year nowadays.
No, and I'm going to miss him in Chicago, to be honest. I thought he was going to be, the franchise running back of Chicago. But once again, a great young talent they're getting rid of. I don't get it.
And here's another explanation. Again, I don't want to be I'm not trying to anger Bears fans here, but maybe Chicago is trying to have more multi-purpose backs on their team because obviously with Tariq Cohen, he's a great wide receiver. You can put him out there. You look at guys like Le'Veon Bell, who are great. Heck, you can even put him in a slot wide receiver position. So if that's what the Bears are doing, I get why they're doing it. But again,
what if Chicago signs Jay Ajayi?
That would be a really real That's a real possibility. I think
if they do that. Sorry, I keep interrupting you. I'm sorry. If they do that, then I can see, and they pay him less, then I can see this move. But right now they're not making moves on running backs, and I don't see them drafting one because they need to fill other positions. Maybe not. Maybe they got to draft a running back in the 3rd round, which, maybe there's going to be one that they're going to get a steal out of again. But maybe they signed Jay Ajayi to 2 years, $8 million. And if they do that, I think I'm okay with the decision. But right now it's a catastrophe, and I don't see what the front office is doing. That's my take on that.
I think if you're Chicago, you could get Jay Ajayi for 1 year, at least $2 to $3 million. That is a bargain, really, in reality. Because look what the Jets paid for Le'Veon Bell. They paid a ridiculous amount of money for Le'Veon Bell. And Jay Ajayi in his prime, and even when he's 90% healthy, he's a really good all-purpose back. So put him in Chicago. Again, Mitch needs a running game to rely upon. You cannot ask Mitch to throw the ball 40 times a game and win you a game. He's not Tom Brady. He's not Matt Ryan. He's not any elite quarterback. So the priority of the Bears should be, how can we fix our running game? If we didn't think Jordan Howard is the answer, then who is?
Yeah, I mean, even Jay Ajayi's stats are, if you look at them, Jordan Howard's way better. So that would be a downgrade if Chicago got Jay Ajayi. But I don't know. I'm confused by this. I don't understand it. If they got a 2nd or 3rd round pick for him, which I think he's worth because of his production and his talent and his skill set. He's a good running back. He's worth the 2nd round pick. If they got him to maybe move up and pick a brand new one. But even still, then he's only 3 years in, and he's produced for Chicago, and he just gave him the boot for 6th-round pick. It's so dumb. I'm done talking about this.
And again, you can't blame Ryan. Again,
You can't blame Ryan Pace.
You can't blame him. That's a stupid move. Look, I'm not a Bears fan by any means. I'm a Lions fan, so obviously the Bears kind of smoked us this year because obviously the Lions roster obviously sucked.
Chase Daniel.
Chase Daniel beat us, so if that says anything about our Lions roster. But again, you're playing the NFC North. Look what quarterbacks you're playing against. Aaron Rodgers, Matt Stafford.
Even Kirk Cousins, I know he had an off year, but he's still a solid quarterback. I mean, he can't really win big games per se, but I think next year he's going to explode. I think he's going to pass for 4,000 yards. He's going to throw for 35 touchdowns and like 11, 12 interceptions. I think he's going to be really good in Minnesota, and I think last year was kind of his down year because he's always been really good. I think last year was his down year, and I think he's going to be worth that money that they're paying him right now. And I guess we'll have to see. But even if you throw Kirk Cousins in the mix, he can sling it. He throws yards. He gets touchdowns, right? So
exactly.
You play him, Aaron Rodgers, Matt Stafford, all gunslingers. Mitch Trubisky, not a gunslinger.
No.
So you need something else to help him out, and Jordan Howard was that. And Tariq Coleman was good too, a speedy little back, but you also needed power when you're on that 4th and 1, and you need something like that.
Exactly. And again, if you're Chicago, you have to understand there's 2 ways to win the NFC North. Number 1, you need to be able to throw the ball across the field. Clearly, the Bears are not at that stage with Mitch. Or number 2, ball control. We saw this with Minnesota when they had Adrian Peterson. They ran a ball control offense. We saw this with the New York Jets. With Mark Sanchez, they went to 2 AFC championship games on a ball control offense. Ground and pound. That's what the Bears are. They're not the Lions obviously Stafford wasn't slinging the ball around last year, and again, you need to ground and pound for the Bears. Play action passes. That's what wins you games.
No, I can see if they had a gunslinger back there, maybe sign a couple good receivers. Like, we don't really need the running game, but they need it. Mitch Trubisky needs the help, and I don't see another good replacement for Jordan Howard, and I think it's going to be a running back roulette for the next several years until they realize, oh, shoot, we got rid of a really good player that could have exploded onto the scene. I don't get it. If you got anything else to say, go ahead.
And I think my final point I do want to make on the Chicago Bears is you have all the pieces in place. You have your quarterback. You have an outstanding defense. You have great wide receivers on the outside. But here's my final take on Chicago. You must address needs that cost you in the playoffs. So number 1, your kicker. You don't sign a good kicker, that costs you the game. Number 2, you don't rely upon Jordan Howard in the playoffs, and you let him go. So the Bears needed to fix those needs this offseason. They didn't.
No, and I think they're going to go 10-6 and miss the playoffs. I think because of these 2 dumb moves, they're not going to be as good, and it makes no sense.
And lastly, before we conclude this episode, I want to bring up something that's very recent in the news. So the majority owner of the AAF, the Alliance American Football League, recently said that the league could crumble and fall apart because of their lack of negotiations with the NFLPA when it comes to exchanging players. Now, I love watching the AAF. It's very exciting to watch. It's very innovative. But again, if you are
Johnny Manziel,
yeah, the Memphis Express. But by the way, Memphis Express are actually last in the league. That's another discussion. Just kidding. But again, if you are the majority owner, you should have been negotiating. And again, this goes to the commissioner of the league. You should have been actually negotiating with the NFLPA when you first started the league. Then this wouldn't be a problem. You could say, you know what? A player on a roster, a player on an NFL roster doesn't make it, send him to the AAF. Or if you want to elevate a player from the AAF to the NFL, go for it. But again, I think it's a horrible management move by the AAF.
Yeah, I think so as well too, and I'm going to have to agree with you on that. It's just kind of sad because this thing was so promising. Now, I can see them playing for a couple more years, but if they don't get this thing under the control, they don't get it under control quickly, this could be a disaster And then all we'll have to watch is Mark Trestman coach in the XFL.
Yes, and I really think that the majority owner of this league and all people involved in this league really missed out on a great opportunity to. Again, I never thought this league was going to be expansive, like they were going to rival the NFL by any means. Heck, I don't even think they were going to rival the XFL. I really thought they could have been a minor league system, kind of like a minor league system to the NFL, where you say, you know what, this player may not be ready for the league, but we'll let him play in the AAF for a year or two, then we can bring him back up. Something like that. That's what I was kind of thinking for that.
Yeah, I would have to agree with you, and that is going to conclude our podcast at 40, a little over 40 minutes. Follow us on Twitter, football_incorporated. One thing I'm going to say is I'm looking forward to the fall. There's a lot of stuff there's a lot of stuff in the fall to talk about, but we're only running 40-minute podcasts right now because it's really the same teams that keep coming up. And I don't want to make these podcasts redundant. So if you're listening, you're like, it's only 40 minutes once a week. Believe me, we're two college students. We're doing our best to get this thing out, get the word out there. We're just doing what we love. And if you love listening to us, we really appreciate it. Download us on Spotify. We're on YouTube. We're going to try and get on Apple Podcasts here pretty soon. But yeah, so thank you again for listening. Once again, my name is Cody Kirsten, here joined by Patrick Arthurs, and you have a great rest of your day. Thank you.